Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhedu Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastu Andakaro Vai Rukarastu Nivartakaha Andakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So today is our 35th class of the series, of the Pancadasi series. And I think we will make this the last class. We will complete the last portion of the 15th chapter. And with this, and I think we have been recounting the structure of the 5 chapters that we have been doing, even with the answer to a question from last week about Yogananda, etc. So I won't spend much time in revising all of the structures, that you know that pretty well. But today I think we will try to complete the 15th chapter, and with that this segment of Pancadasi, the Ananda Brahmananda segment of the Pancadasi, will be over. And we will start a new text from next week. I'm considering a couple of different ones. I haven't made up my mind yet, so I will do that, and I will let you know if you want to continue with the Tuesday night class with a new text. My thinking is that we are going to take some shorter segments of different texts, so not a complete 35. That became a very long time. So that's my thinking, but let's see how that goes. So for this class, from these 35 lessons, 35 classes of the 5 chapters, basically the acharyas of Vedanta have tried to explain to us how Ananda, which is the basic goal for all of us want really happiness in life, but the absolute happiness, which is not dependent on anything, is elusive to us. We don't really quite know how to get that, if we can get that. So here the acharyas have said, yes, it is very, very possible. And in fact, so much so that it is already done. There is nothing to be acquired, but there is something to be understood. So in terms of the overall messaging of these 5 chapters, perhaps two important segments, 2 important aspects of the Ananda Vichara should be appreciated in its entirety. not the details, but just the overall structure of it. So, number one, so there are two of them. One is the source of Ananda that we are seeking is neither outside of me nor inside of me. In fact, it is me. It is not a quality that I have to acquire, either from my dealings with the world outside. It is not something that I need to obtain from my good experiences of life, making my life very smooth and pleasant. So this you cannot, it is a losing proposition. The moment you try to think that I think I've got it, you lose it. And so the dependence on Ananda outside of me, as the Acharyas say, is please understand that this is not going to happen. Neither is it inside of me. So this is what sometimes in simple words the Vedantins say, that this Ananda is neither a bhoga nor a yoga. So bhoga is dependence on external factors, and yoga is a search for certain qualities that I can enhance without depending on the outside world. Essentially, that's what yoga is. So in that sense, both of them are, and so the Acharyas of Advaita Vedanta say that is not the right thing. You cannot try to get some treasures that are buried inside of you and to obtain it through yogic practices. You can achieve quite a bit of it, but ultimately you will not be very successful. And what is the reason for that? People can ask, why not? I can understand where bhoga is not fruitful, but what about yoga? The reason for that is that in yoga also, it is, unless it is properly done and actually becomes a Raja Yoga, which is really nothing but Vedanta. So then the two of them are not any differences. But in general, the yogic practices are not successful because of the following reason. That the status of yourself remains the same even though your experiences are very pleasant. So essentially you will say, I am a limited person having a very good yogic experience. It is false. You are really not a yogic person. You are not a limited person at all, even though you are having a very pleasant experience. So all that means is, and Swami Dayananda used to stress on this very well, that the Ananda, a sense of freedom, is neither outside of you nor inside of you. It is you. This I have to investigate. How can I be the very nature of the Ananda? So this vichara has to be done. So therefore, in the Ananda vichara of any structured Ananda vichara, including the 5 chapters of Pancadasi, two factors, as I mentioned, are stressed. One is the ananda is neither outside nor inside, it is you. The second part of that is that being the case, you have to figure out where you are going wrong. Assuming that you are at least giving some Shraddha to Vedanta, then that Shraddha says you have to really examine the very nature of yourself. And so this is neither outside nor inside, it is you itself. This I don't understand. How can I be the very nature of Ananda? Sat Chit Sukham. How is that possible? This is what needs to be done. And in doing so, you have to take the responsibility and the initiative of figuring it out. You cannot, there may be some things that the world can make it worse for you, some things where your own subjective feelings about yourself and the world can make it worse for you, but it doesn't really matter. In other words, there's no reason to blame anything, no reason to blame yourself or the world. That doesn't lead to anything. You just have to investigate the truth of this statement. And if you leave aside all distractions, the world is happening, so much is happening, this, that, or the other, what am I supposed to do? Or that you blame yourself for some shortcomings, whatever. None of that really applies. So a vichara, atma vichara, alone can give you the results. So these are the two main conclusions out of all the 5 chapters. Again, number 1, that you are the Ananda. You are the very source of Ananda and not something that you possess as a wealth. Although we often talk about it like this, that you don't know how rich you are and so on, so as though there is a difference between you and the wealth. So we can sometimes say that, but in reality, you are the very wealth, not any different. In other words, Ishvara and you are one and the same. That's what it actually comes down to. And this statement has to be understood, and what was the word I was looking for? Where assimilated. You kind of agree to that because you give the benefit of the doubts to the acharyas and to the words of wisdom, but it hasn't been assimilated. And so the assimilation of that, it has to be really done. So these are the 2 main conclusions that we do, that you are the very source of Ananda and you have the responsibility of figuring it out. Everybody can help you with that, but the Atma Kripa is the one, which is Atma Vichara, is the way to do it. So these are the 2 things that we talked about. So here, just to very quickly go through some of these verses in the 15th chapter, in the 18th verse, okay, there is a word called virakta. Virakta. So in the language of the Mahatmas, especially with Swami Akhandananda Ji's many books, this word comes up very prominently. Very prominently. I've been reading all this, I became very sensitive to this word. And so what that means, and this is what is said in the 18th verse. I won't read it just for the sake of time. But if you look into the 15th chapter, on the 18th verse, you will see virakta, virakti or virakta. What is virakta? So Swami Akhandananda ji also says that I have met many people who have really studied Vedanta and who have sometimes not even studied Vedanta, but they have come to this realization about what is going on, who are they, and so on. But the one common theme from all these people who really made it in their life was that they were virakta. Virakta. And Swami Akhandananda ji gives so many different examples. He had approached some Mahatma one time and said, I'm searching for. This was somewhat early in his life when he was still searching. So he was saying that I'm searching for to be near a Mahatma. Can you please advise me as to where I should go? And I saw this. This is where the word virakta I first became sensitive to. So this Mahatma told him, so let me ask you, you are looking for a virakta, are you not? Or are you looking for a scholar or somebody who can explain? So Swamiji said, sorry sir, I'm really looking for a virakta. And I'll explain what a virakta is in a minute, but I can explain it by describing who he saw and who he met, who he stayed with for a long time. There was this one guy who used to live in a completely abandoned house. There was nothing there, not even water or heat, and he didn't seem to care. Somehow he would eat leaves, whatever it is, or some people will bring something, he will eat it, and he didn't eat much. But he was happy. There was a joy in his life, joy in his face. And people would come for satsangs with him and so on, and he would say, I don't want to do too much of this. Just let me be happy, just by myself. He didn't want any seva, and no shishyas, and he was not opposed to it. If somebody came in and asked him for some things, like Swami Akhandananda ji gave him, was there one of them, he would explain these things to him. He was totally oblivious of the world around him and didn't care. So he says and he met many such people, not just one. That was one of the first ones that he met. He met many people who were viraktas. One very interesting example he gives. He says one time, because Swami Akhandananda ji was born in a village in the Uttar Pradesh, UP, close to Varanasi. And that is a joy in this is all described in his book called Pavana Prasanga, which is a biography of hundreds of Mahatmas that he has met over the life. What a treasure this is. So he was describing one such incident where he was visiting Varanasi and perhaps teaching. Swami Akhandananda ji was a great teacher of Bhagavatam. So a lot of people will come to his discourses on Bhagavatam, including some Mahatmas who had not studied Bhagavatam. They also were his students. So one time he was staying he was giving these talks on Bhagavatam. And There was a gentleman who was the principal of a college in Varanasi that I think was teaching both Sanskrit as well as Vedanta. There are many such beautiful places in Varanasi. It's one of the oldest cultural cities in the whole country. And he was a very famous person. He was a professor and so on. And so this person came to see him in the morning sometimes, privately, and said, Mahatma Ji, I really need your advice. And you may know how accomplished I am. I have become head of the department, and I'm very scholarly in terms of teaching Vedanta and the language for it, and so on. But quite frankly, Swamiji, I am not a fulfilled person. And so this is how the dialogue went. And Swamiji was giving this as an example that mere study, mere scholarship and accomplishments in life really don't mean anything until you become virakta. So the virakta now we can define as an accomplished tyagi. So a tyagi is one who perhaps is attempting to be free of different limitations in life and this, that, all of those kinds of. So the tyaga is very highly sought after as, in fact, it's vairagya and tyaga. Both of them are very similar. There may be some technical differences between them. So I'll discuss that in just in 1 second, but let me continue the thought that tyaga and vairagya are essential qualities for happiness, no doubt about it. But virakta is the highly accomplished form of vairagya and tyaga. You really don't depend on anything. You can even say Jivan Mukta is the one who is pretty close to becoming a virakta. But he is not a virakta, he or she is not a virakta because you still depend upon some regular meals and this, that, or the other. These are all fine definitions of various things. I'm just to give you the idea. So the real Mahatmas that he met and the ones he is asking us to become are to become totally devoid of any attachments whatsoever. If your family is not happy with you, so be it. If your friends are not happy with you, there's no problem. You are so satisfied with yourself. You don't need anything at all. This is where we have to aspire to. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. All it requires is your own self-courage and your conviction and your understanding of the principles of Vedanta. Yes, definitely it is possible. And so anyway, so in the 18th verse, he talks about the ultimate ananda comes to viraktas. So then the other thing I was talking about, that it's a very interesting, very good logic actually. It's so wonderful. A logic is relative to Vishayananda. Relative to pertinent to the Vishayananda. So if you look at a Ajnani, a normal samsari, it is very clear that the ananda for a normal samsari comes from vishayas, from the various objects, acquisition of objects. Okay, it's very clear. People will, this is what everybody is engaged in. And what we want, accumulations, we want experiences. So this is what artha kama refers to. Artha and kama means, artha means security, more things to possess that you never fall short of. And kama means the ability to enjoy good food, good music, etc., etc. So this is what everybody is doing. We want more Vishayananda because, everybody says, have you been to such and such place? Have you gone to that concert? Have you read this book? Oh, you must read it. It's so much fun. Have you been to that restaurant? Everybody is trying to figure out how to maximize my Vishayananda. Okay? So here's the logic, very interesting logic. So Swami Khandananda says that from the behavior of such people, you can draw logic. That logic is that Ananda belongs to Vishayas. Right? Different Vishayas, Ananda belongs to food, music, etc., etc., books. So this is the logic, that Ananda is achieved by the acquisition of Vishaya. Now the logic is, we all know that even a vairagya towards some things also gives ananda. Okay, so what we can do is to say, yes, Vishayas also give us ananda, and if only Vishayas give ananda, then I would never get an ananda from not being desirous of certain things, just being okay with it. Well, we can understand the very obvious examples in our lives, which is that of sports. So we are sports fans. The word fans means fanatics. So sports fans means that you tie your happiness to the success of the team that you're supporting. Very obvious. This is exactly what happens. You have given your soul to the fact that this is the team, this is my team. They're the best. And let anybody challenge them. I guarantee you will do very well against them. And if they don't, then I get unhappy. I become gloomy. And there's a sense of disappointment that what happened. In the case of our basketball team in San Francisco. So we expected them to do better, but because of many problems of the team, this, that, or the other, it didn't. It got bounced by our rivals, LA Lakers. Disappointment. But consider this. There may be people in the household who are happy whether these teams lose or win. My spouse is one of them. We might be chewing our nails and saying, oh my gosh, only 2 left. Oh, guess that or the other. I find her, she is happy just sitting there, reading a book, cooking, doing something. She's aware of what's happening, but she'll say, oh, did they win? No, they didn't win. Oh, they lost. Okay, that's all right. So there is no sorrow by the acquisition of the Vishaya. That's what logic is. So this is something that we have to do a vichara on. It's not necessary that I acquire wealth of the various Vishayas, objects. Not necessary. Somehow I brainwashed myself into thinking that this is what I need to do. But just having an independence. I mean, my life is also like that. At one time, I used to be a sports nut, even from India with cricket and so on and so forth when I was much younger. And it is, I don't care. The other day, some friend, we have a neighbor, Sabir Bhatia of Hotmail. He's now our second doors down, and he's a good friend of ours. And he's crazy about cricket. Crazy about it. Every time I stop by or something, he says, hey, did you see that game against South Africa? What, that was wonderful. Or he will say, my God, how did we lose to Pakistan? I cannot believe this. And I look back at my old days that perhaps I used to be like that. But you know what? I have vairagya towards cricket. I have vairagya towards almost all sports. And that doesn't mean that I don't care. I usually follow the, anyway, I won't go into the details of it and all that. Main point is that I am, this is the logic, this is very beautiful logic. Please consider that you don't need to acquire things in order to be happy. You can be happy yourself. Why is that? Because we are covering ourselves with some desires, and then when those desires are fulfilled, we feel very happy. I mean, this is a silly example, but it'll be something like you stop your breathing. These days, because of my all of the problems with my lungs and so on, they're giving me lots kind of medicines to kind of try out, inhalers. And so this inhaler that I have to do twice a day is where you have to kind of draw it in and then stop the breathing for a while so that to allow the medicine to stay in your lungs. Even if you don't have to take a medicine, you can do that. And pretty soon, if you, after about half a minute, 45 seconds, maybe at the very most, or a minute or so, you cannot tolerate it. It's a very interesting thing how lack of breathing can just destroy you in a matter of seconds. Incredible how vulnerable we are, honestly. And if you just close your nose and mouth and don't breathe for a while, then when you release it, there is such a relief. It is something like this. You pretend that the sports teams are my life, and if they win, you become ecstatic. If they lose, you become sad. But if you don't care, it doesn't really matter one way or the other, because your Ananda is with you all the time. You don't have to import it from anyone. That's one of the logics that we did. Okay, I need to move on. At least a few concepts here before we close. So here, what the acharyas say is that there is a bahir, and this is very similar to bhoga and yoga, very similar to that. So there is a vritti which is called bahirdmukhi vritti. Bahirmukhi vritti means a thought or a series of thoughts that are externally focused. Okay? So here what happens is that because it is externally focused and the external world is uncertain, mixture of good and bad, therefore your vritti also correspondingly is uncertain. It is good or bad, usually a mixture. It is not pure. You are now depending on what's happening outside in the world. Okay, so this is called Bahirmukhi vritti. Then you have an Antarmukhi vritti. And actually this derivation, I think we did it quite early in these 5 chapters. Somewhere in there we saw what happens is that when you eat a rasagulla or an ice cream, okay, so you're eating the ice cream, and when the ice cream is not yet eaten and you are looking for the right flavor, what should I get today? And you see others also eating, and you want to take a little bit of this and all that. So this is all now your desire is being stimulated that, oh my, very soon I'm going to start, having ice cream. So this is externally oriented. You're all focused on this sugary, cold, tasty dish called the ice cream. But when you start eating the ice cream, then the desire of eating the ice cream is fulfilled. And you enjoy all the sense organs associated with eating the ice cream, touch, rasa, your flavor, your taste, your touch, all are very pleasant to you. So the external vritti is now becomes internal vritti. How does it become internal vritti? This is what we were saying in the last couple of classes, that if you look at the locus of sukham, it is really inside of you. So what happens is, normally you ignore the inside by being externally focused. You're not even looking at it. But if the external focus has been fulfilled, then you go back to appreciating the sukham that you are. So the internal vritti, what is called antarmukhi vritti, is always very pleasant because it is directly focused on your Atma without the interference caused by the external world. This is the mechanism that we can go into more technicalities, but overall this is what happens. Okay, one more thing. And this is given in verse 19. It's pointed out that even if you are not desiring a ice cream, even if you have just had ice cream and you cannot eat anymore, okay, that's it, I'm happy and so on. One would think that now that my desire of eating a pleasant dish like ice cream has been fulfilled, then I should just be happy by myself. Why doesn't it happen? Because it doesn't happen. Why not? The reason is, and this is actually taken up by Sri Gaudapadacharya in the Karika in more detail. This is mentioned by Swami Vidyaranya, that There's a thing called kashaya. So kashaya is a kind of like a thin film which is still not allowing you to enjoy your own self. How come? Why is it that? What is this thin film? It is the seeds of desire for an ice cream. If we'll just look at one item now for the time being. So what that means is that even if you have finished eating an ice cream and you enjoyed it, there is a kind of underlying desire which is still there that I will like to eat it again some other time. This is called kashaya. So even if your vritti is shanta, it is quiet, it is not completely turned towards the Atma, because a kind of an underlying future desire of this is just only ice cream, but this can be done for hundreds of other things, all combined together, in fact. And this is what happens, that generally speaking, we are not very happy. Why? Because the kashaya of the outside world is still there as a seed form. You see? That's what I'm saying. So it is not completely antarmukhi. In fact, when you were eating the ice cream, then the antarmukhita, the status of being inwardly bound, was very acute. And so you have no other desires bothering you. It's kind of like, I go back to the sports analogy. That suppose there is a sequence of 7 games in the playoff, and let's suppose that the Warriors, your local team, won the first game. And so you're very happy. It was a close contest, and at the very end, the Warrior team made the baskets. That's exactly what you wanted, and you're very happy. But you know what? The Warriors' future is still there in your mind. Are they going to be able to win the second game? Third game? Will they finish this? If not, then will they go to the next round? Will they win the championship? So your joy is still being held back by this kashaya. These are the various technicalities of how we view our ananda and so on. So this was in verse number 19. So then in some of the remaining verses, 20, 23, 24, 25, and so on, there is a reintroduction of the fact that the aspect of the Atma being Satchidananda, depending upon the adhikari, the qualified person, the quality of the person, the mind, all of those, you may appreciate 1, 2, or all 3 of the aspects of the Atma. So, for instance, in the Kathopanishad it also says, Astiti eva upalabdhavyaha. Asti. So here, Swami Vidyaranya points out that the presence of things is most easily appreciated, because everything manifests itself from being there. Yes, it is, the table is, the chair is, the man is, the woman is. Isness is common to everything. And it is not really very difficult to appreciate that there is what is common in everything in this world is isness. Now the nature of isness may be confusing. That's a separate thing. But at least the isness in general, so the Sat Swarupa of the Satchidananda can be appreciated quite readily and by people that really are not inquiring very deep. That's enough. Then the next thing is Chit Swarupa. So this requires some more thinking, but also is not that difficult. What it means is, please see that what is intertwined with the knowledge of the isness. In other words, the Sat and the Chit are always together. So this fact is more subtle and requires some more maturity on the part of the human beings to appreciate both Chit as well as the Sat. The third aspect of the Atma, which is Ananda Swarupaha, is the most difficult to appreciate. Not difficult, but more elusive. Requires more time, more maturity. Why? Because, as we have seen, that the Ananda seems to be scattered. It's not my Ananda. It is the ice cream Ananda. And it's liquor Ananda. Pasta Ananda, and all those kinds of different Anandas. But it is really nothing but, as we have seen in these 5 chapters, they are nothing but an expression of my own Ananda. So this appreciation of the third factor of the Satchidananda is the most difficult to do. And so this is what is pointed out here. So one other thing here, Maya is brought into the picture. And what it is said is, wait a second, didn't you then say that really speaking the outside Ananda is also a reflection of the inside Ananda? The inside Ananda means my own nature of the Ananda is as though I'm sitting in front of the mirror and what I'm looking at is really nothing but my own reflection. And therefore the reflection also, even though it is outside of you, is really just you. Hadn't you been saying this? So we said, yes, we have been saying this. That really the whole world is nothing but Satchidananda. Whether it is outside or inside, that's just simply a way of looking at it. But the essential nature of the whole world, of the whole creation, is Satchidananda Brahman. That's what we say. So now a question is asked, if that is the case, why do you need to bring in Maya as one of the one of the factors that you have to deal with. You don't have to deal with Maya. Just go straight away to the fact that it's everything is Satchidananda. So we say we wish we could, but in fact we see various people at various stages of their maturity not being able to directly see this. It is not an obvious thing for them. And the reason is that the Maya Shakti, the very nature of Maya, is just the opposite in some way of Brahman. Brahman has Satyata. Maya has Asatyata. Asatyata means it gives a false impression something is when it isn't. Then Brahman is Swayam Swarupaha, and it is Chetana Vastuhu. Maya is inertness. It is the expression of the Chetana Vastu. It is Achetanaha. Like, for example, we saw that the electricity is Chetana in that sense, in that example, whereas the application of electricity in an appliance is not the original electricity, it is simply a reflection of the electricity, depending on the inertness of the various objects of the appliance. So Jadata. And again, now finally, the nature of Brahman is Sukham. The nature of Maya is Dukkhita. It surely will give you some problems, one form or the other. So therefore, we have to bring in Maya to explain how various people do not immediately understand Brahman. They understand it in stages, and perhaps based on their qualifications, their understanding, their adhikaritvam. So what it means is that someone who has, as we have studied before, ghora vritti and muda vritti, means that you are not together as a person. You are just at the realm of the world, and you react very easily, and you blame others. All those kinds of qualities, less than stellar qualities. That is the mood and ghora vrittis. Then you should really do dhyanam on Sat and Chit only. At least try to get that everything is Sat, everything is Chit. There may be some things that are Sat but not Chit. But even there is actually a presence of Chit even there. The example given is that of a dream. So in the dream, you may have rocks. You're sitting on a rock. You're sitting on a chair in the dream. So clearly the dream chair is also a jada vastu. But is it a jada vastu? No. Because that also is nothing but an expression of your own Chetana. So the Chetana has both Jadatvam as well as Chetanatvam as a reflection. So therefore, people that are not quite, they don't have the Shanta Vritti, first they should really focus on Sat and Chit. And then slowly, when they come to the Shanta Vritti, sattva guna, then start thinking about, you can start thinking about any time, but really nothing will happen. But the analysis of Ananda, the Ananda Vichara, Ananda Mimamsa, can only become effective when your Sattva Guna becomes Pradhana in your own life. So this is all discussed in some of these verses. I'm just giving you the gist of it. Another distinction between the beginners and intermediate thinkers and the advanced thinkers is that the beginning and the intermediate thinkers think of Saguna and Nirguna separately. They think that when you are in Saguna, then you should just be involved in the transactional reality. And then perhaps at the time of meditation, you can focus in on Nirguna, where you don't care about transactions, the changes, all of that. You're completely focused with your eyes closed on the Nirguna Brahman. And so there really are like two stages, something like the Ramanujan's Vishishta Advaita. The Vishishta Advaita means that there are two different Advaitas. There is a Jagrata Avastha and all those kind of things. So there are two separate things. So this is the thinking of the beginner and the intermediate people. An advanced thinker, an advanced student, even when the vyavahara is going on, brings in the reality of the Brahman at that time. And really, nothing is separate from the Ishvara. It's all a big play. And so you cannot say this is not Nirguna Brahma, this is Saguna Brahma. Nirguna Brahma will come later. No. They're all mixed together. And yes, they're difficult to see at first, but the more you get accustomed to it, the more you think about it. That just means that an advanced student keeps the status of Aham Brahmasmi as much as possible during Vyavahara. So that was what's talked about. Then, in the last few verses, Swami Vidyaranya repeats. He has already brought it up earlier, but he repeats the subtle distinction between Dhyanam and Vidya. So Dhyanam, which is certainly the Savikalpa Dhyanam, is different from Vidya. Why? Because in Dhyanam, you still have Triputi. I am thinking, and I'm thinking of this, and this whole experience is that of thinking. Whereas in Vidya, there is Akhandata. There is no separate status that I am a thinker, I am thinking of something else. The whole thing is nothing but Akhanda Akara Vritti. It's all one. And if there is some Vritti, it doesn't really matter. It is just a dreamlike experience. Nothing else really matters. And then verse number 33, he summarizes by saying that this akhandata is called bhuma. So the Shastra gives it a very specific name called bhuma, or really Brahman. Then Sanat Kumara to Narada also said, Yo vai bhuma tat sukham. So the real sukham comes when there is complete non-duality. Everything seems like just one and the same. Thoughts disappear, experiences disappear. You just are a complete Purnaham. Aham Purnaha. So that's the final Ananda. So that completes the last chapter called the Vishayananda. And I think Swami Vidyaranya, which all the other Mahatmas emphasize, the difference between a Ajnani, a Samsari, and a Jnani, or at least a Mumukshu. Not that much difference between Mumukshu and Jnani. So the difference is that in the case of a Jnani, a Samsari, you just have Vishayananda as the focus. As we've already talked about this, so I'm just summarizing this, that you are accumulating as many things as possible. Whereas in the case of Jnani, the whole focus is not on the Vishayas, but how the Vishayas are creating Ananda in me. Where is the source of it? What causes it? So that Mimamsa must be very clear, and it should be done automatically while you're transacting with the world. And under the guidance of what the Shastra says. And if you do that, then you reach a place that the Ajnanis cannot, because you are satisfied with yourself unconditionally. So that's kind of like the last summary of what is being talked about. So with that, I close this class and I close the segment of study associated with the Panchadashi and all the 5 chapters. And very happy that I had a chance to think about it and discuss it and teach it. And I hope you also got something out of it. So with that, I close this section in the class with a prayer. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Okay. good. Very good. Very good. Wonderful. So good. Stay tuned for next Tuesday, and we will. I'll think about the right topic, maybe a series of topics, and but at least you have a good section on the Pancadasi that you can refer to in future. And all of these really enhance our ability to understand the totality of this. So I'm very appreciative of all of you being the students, and allows me to also think and teach and imbibe myself. So I appreciate your coming together every Tuesday night, and all the best to you. Hari Om.